Here we are back with our third video of the Let's Talk series. So today we'll be talking about off-campus placements. So with me I have Adithyaa and Vijay here. So something that you should know about both of them is they took the path less traveled. They went on their own and got two amazing offers from Bain. Sadi will be joining Bain as an associate consultant, and Vijay has already joined Bain as a private equity analyst. So that being said, let's very quickly dive into the purpose of the video to give you an overview of how everything works with off-campus placements. So before we go into the nitty-gritties of how to apply and everything, let's take a step back and understand the reason why people have to go for off-campus placements. So let's start with Sadi and Vijay. Why did you guys decide to take this path less traveled, and what are the benefits that come along?
Yeah, great question. Right, so for me, I was very specific about certain domains that I really wanted to get in immediately after my engineering undergrad. And I kind of realized after 2 or 3 years that my core engineering wasn't really for me, and a lot of other domains wasn't really for me. And so over the course of time, I was very specific about certain domains, and I felt that I will not really get those opportunities through on-campus placements. So I think that was one of my primary reasons why I really wanted to go off campus, because I think that kind of experience was something that I genuinely wanted. I think that was my biggest motivation. What about you, Vijay?
For me, I think I always knew I would apply for off-campus placements because of two reasons. Number one, just sheer probability, I guess. There are obviously more number of roles and more diversity of roles outside. So why would you not want to give a shot for that, right? So that was one interest, and I think everybody should apply as well, right? So don't limit yourself to just the opportunities available on campus. So that was one very obvious reason. The second reason was that a lot of the on-campus profiles did not interest me, and I just wanted to explore things that were outside. Yeah, so those were just my two reasons for applying off campus.
Yeah. So talking about the first point that Vijay kind of mentioned, right? Even if you're interested in certain domains, and if companies are really coming for on-campus placement in that particular domain, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should not apply off-campus. You need to understand that there are so many different opportunities out there, so many companies that are recruiting, and you shouldn't really restrict yourself just to on-campus placement opportunities and the opportunities that you're kind of getting over there. So it's always better to try searching for as many companies and opportunities as possible outside.
Great. So our audience is probably comprised of second years, third years, fourth years, and maybe even freshers. So one thing that I want to understand from you guys is, when did you actually decide that you're going to be applying off campus? Was it when the placement season happened and then you didn't really find companies coming in that you decided, or you already had that at the back of your head right from joining college? Because this will kind of help the audience prepare for whatever is going to come.
Yeah. So with respect to off-campus full-time opportunities, I kind of think that I made up my mind in third year itself that I would focus a lot more on off-campus placements. Although I did not completely leave on-campus placements. I did prepare and sit for a lot of companies on campus. But the moment I got placed, I immediately started preparing for off-campus opportunities. And I think this decision I took when I was in my third year, when I kind of realized that the roles and the kind of domains that I wanted to get into, I couldn't really do that through campus. So
Yeah. So for me, I never wanted to sit for placements in the first place, and I decided to sit for campus placements itself at the end of third year. But I think right when placement season started and I saw the kind of profiles coming, so exactly the time at the starting of fourth year when I saw the profiles coming, I decided I would definitely be, trying my luck off campus as well.
Okay, that's great to know. So all the third years and fourth years who are watching this video, it's never too late. You've heard two people who kind of thought about off-campus placements only at the end of their third year, and they've made it. So can you? So I think that being said, that brings us to the next part of the video, which is how do you actually go about and prepare for off-campus placements? And there are a lot of parts to it, right? And one thing that I've heard from both of you whenever I talk to you about how did you land this job, and we've talked a lot about this, one word that kept coming up is this word called networking. And it's a big buzzword now in this era. So if you guys can talk about what exactly networking means according to you, and how did you go about it, and how does networking actually help you land a job, it would be great. Yeah, you can start with Sari or Vijay, who is ready.
Yeah, so I'll start off first. So I think with respect to networking, people need to understand that there are like different ways how you can go ahead with things. So there is one form of networking which is completely focused on, you know, building relationships with people or like working professionals over a long period of time. And the long period of time can be 6 months, it can be 2 years. Guess who knows? It can even be like 3-4 years for that matter. So I think that's like one way that you need to think about it. And the other way a lot of people are networking these days is just like it's very like short term thingy where you immediately ask people for, you know, kind of referrals, send them messages, or kind of impress them in like a very very short span of time, meet them in some kind of networking event, and maybe ask as to whether any opportunities are available. Right. So broadly, I would say these are the two different types of networking, and people generally need to understand that when it comes to off-campus placements, whenever you're applying for one particular company, you need to try and analyze and check which method that you kind of have to follow. So if you were to compare and contrast between these two different ways, the building relationships part is a very long-term thing. It takes a lot of time, but that's the way you can get into the most difficult and competitive companies out there. Right, so that's basically how you do it. And I think the primary fact that me and Vijay were able to get into, you know, the consulting space and the private equity space is primarily because of us building relationships with like certain consultants and senior level folks in a lot of consulting firms. So that's like a broad overview of that. So I think with respect to like short term thingy, people, I think primarily you need to use LinkedIn as a platform to reach out to people. So what I usually do is that I try to identify like many companies and folks in each of these individual organizations, and I try to send them like a 150 to 200 word message, just quickly introducing myself, talking about what my background is, my projects are, why I want to work in that particular company wherever I'm applying to, and talk about what kind of role that I'm applying for. So this would be like a 150 to 200 word message that I usually send on LinkedIn. And post which in most cases I get a reply, most cases I do not really get a reply. So after that I ask for their email ID, and you know, I try sending them a well drafted cover letter, a resume, and then I get like an interview call. So I think a broad level I would say that this would be how I did it. And there were a lot of other things. But before that, I would love to know how Vijay's experience has been. And maybe we could talk about like what the best practices are when it comes to networking after this.
So I think Sadi covered it pretty well. But I think I can add to both the points, the short term and the long term ones. So when it comes to long term building relationships, so that kind of networking, the reason it works is because all these senior folks, they already have a lot of people reaching out to them. So they're not going to put any value on all of these people unless you sort of maintain that relationship in the long term, and that's the only reason you have to put in some effort towards that. It may not pay off. You are investing a lot of time into it. It may not pay off, but if it does pay off, it'll pay off really well. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
When it comes to short-term networking, you primarily use LinkedIn, and I don't think it's quite obvious that always send a personalized message. Never just send a request. That's the main tip. And even if you are sending a message, always try to send a message to people you can find a common ground with. It might be that you have interned at a company, or you maybe, in my case, I interned at ISB, Indian School of Business, and I could actually reach out to a lot of ISB alumni through that way. So try to find people with some sort of common ground. Maybe they're in the sector that you have some experience in, or you have some internship in. They can also be people from the same place as you. So just try to find some common ground and sort of draft a message according to that, and post that. What I used to do was I would get on a call with them, talk about my interest in the industry, and ask them about their journey into the industry and how they're finding the work there. So the moment you show interest in them, they'll also have some interest to reciprocate, and when they show that, they're much more likely to add value to you, want to add value to you.
Yeah. So Yeah. So one interesting point that you mentioned is like common ground, right? I feel that it's like really applicable to me, and that's the kind of strategy even like I use when it comes to like off-campus placements. So one thing obviously is that you have, when you're part of like a college, you have your own alumni network. A lot of people, senior level folks who have probably done an MBA or MS in like some like premier institute, and they are in like very senior level positions. So using that alum network is like very important. So I think that's on one side. Now on the other hand, if I actually look at my journey and all of the internships that I've kind of done, right? Every internship that I did like kind of led to the next one. Because of the network that I kind of had. So I got an opportunity to work at 𝐓𝐢𝐦𝐻𝐬 Consulting, and I had a fellow intern over there who I was like relatively close with. And after that intern was over, I was searching for other internships at startups, and I was planning to reach out to the founder of that particular company when I realized that, you know, the previous intern that I worked with and the CEO of that particular company were like mutual connections, and they were like college mates. Right? So I leveraged that particular connection, and I reached out to that person, and he gave me like good word, like he gave me like a recommendation and everything to that person, and I was able to get that next internship. And in the next internship, I learned, I was actually in the fintech space, and you know, I was able to go to a lot of networking events and meet a lot of people over there. I got a lot of knowledge about the industry, all the different kinds of companies that are there, and I would say that was the primary motivation for me to get the next internship, which was again in the fintech space, in the neo-banking space again, right? So I would say that like making sure that whatever experiences you have, it doesn't necessarily have to be like an internship. It can even be your school, your college seniors, your school seniors, any network that you could probably like tap into, you can do it. It's very important that you kind of have that common ground. So I think with that being said, Vijay, I would love to know about how we actually went about with that long-term relationship building thingy. How did we actually land that particular, the job, right? So how did we go about that? We'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think that was completely by chance, right? So we both happened to be in 180 Degrees Consulting, and so we had a mentor at Bain, and we had a long-term relationship. He helped us out a lot over the projects, right? He knew we were doing good work, and I don't think I ever planned to take it as a network. He was just guiding us for projects, right? So he added a lot of value. We kept in touch with him, and in the end, I don't think both of us, we never asked him for referrals, but he still ended up giving it, right? So I think that really shows that building networks and genuinely wanting to add value to and being interested in the industry really pays off in the long term.
Yeah, and an interesting point is that when you're trying to get into all of these competitive companies, you cannot go to that person in the first conversation itself expecting that person will refer you, right? I think for like 1.5 years to 2 years, I was like under the impression that it's impossible to get into all of these consulting firms. So I think both me, Vijay, Achyut, we were all just focusing on trying to understand what are the best practices like in management consulting, although we knew it was like impossible. So we were very genuine and true to that particular point that we just wanted to learn. And it just so happened that we were able to build relationships with people, which ended up giving us such opportunities. So I think that's kind of like how it happened.
Yeah, I think a couple of really interesting points. One thing to notice, from the points that both of them have shared, is the relationships that you build are not standalone, right? It's not restricted to one person. The relationships that you build, you never know what chain reaction it might cause, what domino effect might happen, and you might end up getting a lot of bigger opportunities. And that is testament to the fact that Sadi got all his internships with the network that he built in his previous internships. The mentor that we had at 180DC that the three of us always went to for any help ended up referring both of them at Bain. So, I mean, never have that result-oriented mentality while networking is something that I've understood from this conversation. To network to genuinely add value and to genuinely build relationships, and as a byproduct, good things will happen. So I think now that we've talked about how do you go ahead, network, find the right people, the next thing is as a result of the networking, you get a lot of opportunities, right? And that is the way probably all three of us have built our profiles. So maybe both of you can go ahead and give the audience an overview of what, at the end of the day, your profile actually looked like on paper when you were applying to Bain. So we can start off with Sadi. Yeah.
Cool. So I think if you look at the profile holistically, there are like 4 different sections. So if you talk about the academic section, I was like an undergraduate student at NIT Trichy. I'll be very open. I had like a CGPA of around like 8.5, and I still don't know what's going to happen in my final semester. So I'm hoping that it stays around that particular point even after that. So yeah, I think that's about like with respect to my academics. I didn't have like that many academic achievements per se. The second section was basically my internships. So I have done like 5 internships in total. The first 2 that I did was just for me to like experiment with like different domains. So I started off in core engineering, then I did data analytics. So I don't want to go into that much detail about those 2. So my third internship was in the management consulting industry, where I worked with 𝐓𝐢𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐦𝐩𝐬 Consulting as a business analyst for a period of 2 months, where I got so much exposure to the consulting world and how consultants actually think and how projects are structured, right? I think that was an amazing experience. And the fourth internship that I did was in a fintech startup called as 𝐓𝐢𝐻𝐸, which is building like a neobank for teenagers. And over there I worked as an operations intern, and that was like the first time I actually got insight into the world of entrepreneurship and startup. And I think that was like an amazing experience for me, getting to interact with so many folks. So they were backed by Y Combinator. They are backed by Y Combinator, Sequoia, and a lot of great institutional investors. They have like amazing external validation. So I think that experience for me was again amazing. And the fifth internship was again in like a fintech startup, which was building a neobank, not for teenagers this time, but for all millennials and older folks. So again, that experience was amazing because the founders of that particular company were, they were part of Google. They were the founders of Google Pay. They left Google and they started their own startup. So I think that experience again, getting to meet and interact with those senior level folks who are changing industries right now was again like an amazing experience. So I think that was with respect to internships. I was with respect to PORs in college. I was part of the marketing team in the fest. I was part of a student consulting organization called as 180 Degrees Consulting, and I was part of the music troupe at NIT Trichy, the college band. And interesting to note that through 180 Degrees Consulting, we also worked on a lot of student consulting projects with other nonprofits and startups. So I think that experience was again like absolutely amazing and added a lot of value to my profile, and I could speak a lot about those experiences. I think the final section of the profile is basically extracurricular activities, and over there I had like been a part of the top 3, top 4 in a lot of prestigious case competitions. So I think that was like an important part of that particular section. And I also got like got selected for a couple of conferences internationally and a couple of fellowships. So I think that was another thing. So I think that's pretty much how my profile
So for
was.
me, so just following Sadi's structure, I think academically I was not great. I always hated studies. And I had a CGPA of below 8. I was a 7.7 without my final sem results. And on top of that, if you look at extracurriculars in college, I was a part of the marketing team. I was a part of 180 Degrees Consulting, where we worked with a lot of startups, a lot of NGOs to solve a lot of problems and get an exposure to consulting. I also won a major case competition with a few folks from 180DC as well. As for internships, I did one core engineering internships. I managed to do it abroad. That was a great experience because I really got to know how core industries work abroad, and it's actually very different depending on the region, starting from the work culture, a lot of that. So that exposure was really nice. The second internship I had was at a startup, and it was a B2B SaaS startup, and I was a sales intern over there. And that was really nice because I got some experience on the best practices in sales. How do you convince business, especially in B2B sales, which can actually be a very rewarding career. And I got a lot of exposure to talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and trying to sell a product to them. And the other internship I did was at the Indian School of Business. No particular reason there. I just wanted to experience what a business school was like. That was my whole motive behind going there. But it turned out to be a really good experience because I got to attend business school classes, meet with business school students, and I got to see all the facilities, everything you can learn over there, and all of that. And I also worked in the Department of Strategy, where I also got some insight into data analytics and machine learning as well. And then in college I've been a part of several other extracurriculars. I've also been a member of the photography club. I've also been involved in a couple of other fest teams, and yeah, a bunch of other extracurriculars related to sports in school as well.
That's great.
Okay, yeah, that's great to know. So I think the audience, the biggest takeaway would be to develop a very holistic profile. As you can see, both Sadi and Vijay have a lot of stuff to speak about in each of the sections, right? The 4 sections that they covered. So that would be number 1. And number 2 would be identifying unique opportunities or unique points that you can put on your resume that will help you stand out in a probably thousands of people who are applying off campus. So if you see, for example, winning national level case competitions that both of them have done, and a few others at 180 DC we've done. So that is something that can really help you stand out. And the second thing would be, as you observe, they also have extracurricular activities in their profile, right? It's not too academic or too career oriented. So people know that you're not like a nerd who's coming and sitting there and will work for 20 hours a day, but at the end of the day, you can't have a conversation with them. So I think that way to differentiate yourself through extracurriculars is also really important. Okay guys, so now that you've understood the profiles of both of them, and we've talked about a lot of aspects of off-campus placements like networking, profile building and everything, there are also a lot of other aspects like how do you do well in your interviews, how do you prepare for interviews, are there any screening tests that happen before your interviews? If yes, how do you prepare? So, but we've already done a video for on-campus placements. We linked that up here somewhere. I don't know where it'll get linked. So there we've already given you a lot of tips about these segments. So you can go ahead and watch that further. So now moving on to the last part of this video is, so everyone is watching, we've given them a lot of information, right? But people might be clueless on how do you actually get started. Like what is the first step that I have to take towards landing my dream off-campus job? So can you guys share with us, how did you actually get started?
Right. So I think if anyone is in that particular position right now where they are like seriously considering like off-campus placements, I think the first thing that they need to probably think about is what stage that they are in right now. So like it's a function of like which year that they are part of and whether they have actively built their profile of they have done like internships in the past. So people need to understand that there are multiple stages to like off-campus placements. It starts off with identifying what domains that you're interested in and what kind of companies that you want to apply for. Then it goes to there's this process of like profile building where you have like all of those positions of responsibilities and relevant skills that you have, and also like past internships. And then the third step will be about like reaching out to all of these folks, and the final step would be reaching out and networking, and the final step would be basically preparing for all of these interviews. So people genuinely need to understand where do they fall in this particular journey, like in all of these different steps, and think about what are the things that they need to like actively work on for the next like couple of months. So trying to understand what kind of companies they're applying for, what is going to be the procedure for that, because we really cannot give generic advice on how do you go about off-campus placements, because it is kind of specific to like certain companies, so we don't want to go into the technical side. But what we are actually planning is that in the next few days we'll be putting up a video giving you like a framework as to how do you go all of the different each of these steps and what are the best practices that people actively follow when it comes to each of these steps. So make sure that you kind of subscribe to our channel, and because we'll be putting up that video pretty soon where we'll be covering all these points.
Yeah, so
Great.
so as Adi said, it definitely depends on where you are right now. But if you're like me and you are at the starting of your final year, you want to get placed now, your profile has been built, you have a couple of internships, you should really refer back to our old video. But just to put it into like a few words, it would be ideally to shortlist the companies, start networking and building relationships, and then apply for companies. And the company process are individual, I'm not getting into that, but yeah, this is what you should be doing.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think we've covered everything that we were meant to cover in this video. So I mean, for the audience, I hope this video has added a lot of value. And if you're really looking to, apply for off-campus companies and everything, then please be on the lookout for our next video, which will give you a robust framework on how to go about applying depending on what stage you are in. So with that, I think we can close this video. Thanks.
Yeah,
for
and I think
Adithyaa and Vijay for-
final thoughts would be that if you have any questions that you want us to answer, please comment it on YouTube. We'll also put our LinkedIn links. If you're too shy to like comment or you're too cold to comment on YouTube, please reach out to us on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to take up those questions, and it's also inspiration for us to make new videos based on all those questions. So make sure you do like comment or send us messages. Yeah.
Yeah, guys. So that's it. Thanks a lot for watching this video. See you soon. Bye bye.